Yo guys, what's up and welcome back to a new video. So I've done videos on comparing Apple Watches, iPhones, I've talked about cameras some, but in this video what I'm going to be talking about is a camera. It's the camera I used to use and I'm going to go back to once I leave this job, which is very sad, which is happening way too soon, about a week and a half now, which is crazy. But what I've been using over the past couple years is this camera right here. It's a Panasonic DMC GX85. It's a tiny little camera, and look at this thing. iPhone, camera, look at the size. Boop. The iPhone is bigger almost. And it's crazy that this is how small cameras have gotten. So in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about it, what I think about it, and the benefits of having a camera this small. Let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, right off the bat, when you see a camera this small, you're like, what the actual heck? I mean, if I take the lens off, which I shouldn't really be doing, look at it. It's the size of my phone. My phone's taller than this camera. And look at this. It's a tiny little guy. And so for a camera to be this small, you might be thinking, what can this camera actually even accomplish, right? And actually, as luck would have it, it can accomplish a whole lot. Of course, it's nothing like a 6D Mark II or even the 80Ds I'm recording on today, but it has these features that are actually pretty good and surprising to find in a camera this small. So right off the bat, this has a tilt screen. It does not have the side flipping screens like on the 80Ds, the 6 Mark II, really any of Canon's that I know of aside from the fixed lens. So it has this little screen that pops out on the side. I don't know if you can see that there. Nothing too fancy. So that pops out on the side. And then it does have, like I mentioned, you saw earlier, detachable lenses. If it has a micro 4/3 mount, it's going to work on this camera. So micro 4/3, I've put up to a 400 mil, which is actually the equivalent of I put a 200 mil, which is the equivalent of around a 300 mil because of that micro 4/3, the 4/3, all that, which I'll get into a little later in the video. So it's a tiny little camera, it's great. So what can it do? Well, if we go into settings, let's go into video, and if we go down here, whoops, this can record a number of different video file sizes and all that. If we go all the way down to the bottom, of course, it can do your normal VGA at 30 frames a second. Again, that's 640 by 480. Then it can do 1280 by 720 at 30. And then it can do 1080 at 30, 1080 at 60. And then it can do 4K at 24 and 4K at 30. So nothing too insane, but I mean 4K 30, that's doing it at 100 megabits a second. You're gonna get some pretty good looking video. And all that's coming off this lovely little 16 megapixel sensor. So obviously it's a Panasonic sensor. It's pretty good. If I take a picture here of you guys, come on. One thing I have noticed with this camera is it is a little picky on settings. So if I zoom in here on myself and my other camera, so I'll go and just throw those photos off. It's a very quiet camera because this is a mirrorless camera. That's one reason it's so small. It doesn't have that flipping mirror. It does have a little shutter that can flip up and down, but with this camera, this camera can be silent is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't have any moving parts. So if I go into here into settings, you won't be able to hear it probably. Actually, I'm right here on this camera here. So if I do this now, I mean, I just took 4 photos, absolutely silent, right? As opposed to with it not on silent mode. Yeah, so it makes a little bit of a noise. Of course, that's just it moving a little shutter up and down inside. Yeah, so what else does this camera have going for it? Well, it has a pop-up flash. Nothing that crazy. It does have a hot shoe, your average sized hot shoe, which is nice. So you can put a mic on here. Actually, you couldn't because it doesn't have a mic jack. You could put an external mic up here. You could attach a flash. There's really a lot of things you could attach to this little camera, which is great. I have a GoPro mount up here actually, and so I can put a GoPro on it, so I can have another angle, higher resolution, lower resolution, just more different angle. So if I'm like recording like this, then I'll have another angle. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about lenses, okay? So the micro 4/3 is obviously a smaller sensor because it's a smaller camera. It's a cropped sensor as opposed to a full frame. And what does that really mean? Well, a full frame, like on a 6D Mark II, and really those high-end cameras like 60 Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV, Mark V. These are these really big sensors. It's the full sensor, hence the name full frame sensor, really. And then once you start getting down in camera sizes, these ADDs are actually cropped sensors, I believe. I'll check and put that up on the screen. But it takes a sensor and then crops it, and then the lens will then angle it to fill up the sensor that's left available. So it's a smaller sensor, therefore it can bring in less light. Then it has more noise in darker environments and all that kind of thing, which is sad, but that's what you get for a cheaper, smaller camera, really. I mean, this is a third of the size of a 60 Mark II, and actually probably like half the size, but it's just crazy how small cameras get like this, and they can still record good video. For example, if I put this in video here, and zoom in, whee, come on. So, I mean, it's got great stabilization, as you can see. It's got great background blur, great bokeh. It'll eventually focus beautifully and slowly, very glossy, and then it comes back over, finds focus on the camera. Come on, there we go. Look at that. Yeah, so it will give you some beautiful video, but it's gonna be nothing like a 60 Mark II recording 1080. To an extent, if you have a very well lit environment, it's going to look better by far, because I mean it's 4K, so it's going to be picking up more detail. But when you start going into the lower light environments, the 60 Mark II, the ADDs, they're going to blow it out of the water just with how much more detail they can pick up in the lower light settings, which is very, very beneficial actually. And so I'm going to throw up a couple photos that I've taken because I've been using this camera for years now. And so I'm going to go and throw up some photos. And if you look at the detail on these photos, like this one here of Grinnell Glacier, I took this on the 60 Mark, or on not a 60 Mark II, on this GX85, and it looks very good. But once you start zooming in, you see a lot more noise and all that. And so where I am here currently, I thought I would take a few photos. I'm actually here by a bog, and so I thought I would take a few photos. See if I can get this thing dialed in real quick. So if I go in here, focus on that. Zoom in, like, ooh, that's a nice log over there. Obviously, these aren't going to be the most detailed, like, planned photos. And so for that, I do apologize. But, I mean, it's not a bad-looking sensor, as you can tell. So I'm going to throw these photos up because my camera's about to die. But, I mean, it's not a bad-looking camera. So should you get it? Well, currently you can get these. Originally, this was a $1,000 camera. Throw on this lens, you had a good $1,200 setup. It was great. It looked great. But this camera came out in 2015-16. And so now this camera is very dated. And it's things like that you need to watch out for when looking at cameras, because you can get so many better features in a camera that's cheap, that was cheaper than this, or that is this price now used. I know Sony just came out with a new camera. I'll throw the name up here because I don't remember it. It's great. It shoots 4K. It's technically downsampled from 6K, so it's really recording 6K video, which is insane at a price point of $499, $599. Of course, it's great at low light. It'll do 4K, 120 frames a second. It's these features that are in prices $400, $500, $600 that are beating these $1,000 cameras from a couple years ago. And that's something that really pertains to all technology, is the fact that as time goes on, they'll be taking these features from these pro cameras that are thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars and putting it in these little $400, $500 consumer grade cameras. And that's something that's absolutely insane. I mean, look at this thing. This is a tiny camera. It's tiny. And to have these features in something like this is absolutely mind-boggling. And for the new camera, like the new Sony I was just talking about, to get those features in something this small or smaller, it's insane. That even comes with like you push it and it zooms automatically. It's crazy to get these features in cameras this small and this cheap, really. And so, should you get this camera? I'm gonna say no. It shoots beautiful raw images. I mean, they're around 13 meg because of the sensor size. So I mean, it shoots beautiful images, great background blur. Obviously, a lot of that depends on the lens you're using. I have an Olympus lens that I took the picture of the moon on. No, I did not go to the moon and take the picture. I took the picture of the moon from my backyard. Here's that image. I mean, this will take amazing photos, but there's cameras that will take better photos at this price point. And so that's a little bit of a talk about the GX85 by Panasonic. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you give it a thumbs up. And leave a comment right below the subscribe button about what you want to see in an upcoming video. I love doing these videos. I love recording. I love the editing process. I love giving you guys what you want to see. I actually have another video coming up very soon that's going to be talking about recording video and photos on the iPhone, not using the stock iPhone app. And so I will catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy, man.